My name is Wendy Brown. I'm 19 years old, and I learned my place in this family at the exact moment a box cutter sliced through ribbon. Go change the world, Max. The engraving on my sister's new MacBook Pro gleamed under the kitchen lights. Mom posed like a publicist. Dad nodded with the grim pride he usually saved for a perfectly seared steak. Maxine, Max, to everyone who adored her, lifted the lid and inhaled as if oxygen lived inside Apple packaging. They clapped for the startup she hadn't even started yet. I got a desktop tower that belonged in a museum gift shop, beige, wheezing, a sticky note taped to the dusty monitor. Use grateful eyes. Mom's version of a pep talk. Smile while you're handed leftovers. I didn't argue. I carried the fossil upstairs, the fan coughing like it had pneumonia, and set it on my desk. That's where I'm best, quiet, beneath the noise, mapping what's broken and how it might live again. Here's the unglamorous truth. I'm not Maxine's confetti. I don't enter rooms with a darling laugh and a varsity aura. I'm the kid who keeps mending Christmas lights that never make it onto the house because we argue about color temperature. The kid who alphabetizes junk drawers because chaos itches. The girl who wants to know which part failed and whether it can forgive itself. I unscrewed the case. Inside, a tangle of cables, like a bad haircut, a power supply that smelled faintly of burnt sugar, and a motherboard that looked like it had seen the Great Depression. Beautiful, I thought, because this was a map, and maps are merciful. They tell you where you are. Downstairs, the celebration bloomed into selfies. Smile, Mom called. I smiled alone at a nest of dust and old heat. I began with air, compressed bursts, soft and savage. I cleaned until the board shone under my lamp, then swapped a dead power supply. From a garage sale tower I'd picked up for $5. I pirated patience from empty places and lined screws on a napkin like tiny planets. I scavenged a fan from a dead projector, soldered new leads with a cracked pen from eBay, and whispered please to a plastic connector older than me. The first boot sounded like a raccoon dying in a duct. The second was just loud. The third, after I rerouted airflow and perched a dollar store desk fan above a jerry-rigged vent, was a coarse whisper. On the fourth, a stubborn BIOS flashed. I coaxed it, and then Linux came up like dawn. I laughed. Not triumphant, relieved. The kind of laugh you exhale when a thing thought worthless says I'm here. It should have ended there. A resurrected corpse, a quiet win. But the board, the fan, the way components snapped together in shapely resistance. I saw it. A kit. Something modular. Replaceable panels instead of glue. Parts that could live second, third lives in schools where budgets are pretend. I thumbed through old sketches in a notebook stained with solder rosin and instant noodle broth and realized my ridiculous idea finally had bones. I built in secret because secrets are safer than applause. I ordered small, standoffs, rails, brackets. I learned which eBay sellers shipped warp-free acrylic and which shipped heartbreak. When cash ran thin, I bartered. Fixed Mr. Alvarez's printer for a box of screw assortments, traded a broken drone for a spool of PLA. Later, while the TV downstairs argued about passwords and my parents argued about the TV, I drew airflow patterns on junk mail and printed side panels in the laundry room at 2 a.m. There were two people who knew anything. Ethan Park, who texts drink water like it's a religion, and Mr. Groves, my high school CS teacher, who once told me hacking the school printer to play MIDI during exams was questionable ethics, excellent execution. Ethan's the only one besides me who believes a thing can be both fragile and ferocious. He doesn't hover. He hands me a sandwich, kisses my forehead, and says, "You're allowed to be big." Then he goes back to his shift. And there's Tara Lynn, Ethan's ex, who orbit likes everything Max posts and nothing of mine. She's not a villain, more of a background hum, like the fan noise you forget to notice until the room goes silent. She still pops up at parties. She still smiles like she knows secrets I don't. Mostly, she annoys the algorithm. Prototype V1 booted, without screaming on a Thursday night. The frame was ugly, honest. Zip ties winked from every angle. The side panel wore tape and my handwriting like tattoos. I took 3 photos with shaky hands and posted at 3:06 a.m. to a tiny subreddit that tolerates my late-night rants. Rebuilt my dad's 2006 Office PC into a modular, repairable desktop. Boots Linux under 5 minutes. Open framework. Parts under $80. Thoughts? I slept. 3 hours, the kind the body demands, not grants. At 9:14 a.m., my phone buzzed like a hive. 6,000 upvotes. Comments with diagrams. Strangers offering to send fans, standoffs, cash. A retired engineer wrote, "If you kit this, I'll buy 5. A youth nonprofit in Detroit asked if I'd consider a classroom version. My heart did a weird slow fast, like tripping up a curb you've stepped 100 times. I checked the kitchen. Dad was reading sports. Mom was scrolling Max's stories. Max was at college, a filtered latte embroidered in her hand. Nobody noticed the way my hands trembled. I told Mr. Groves. He sent a string of confetti emojis then. If anyone calls you a prodigy, nod politely and get back to work. The work is the point. Ethan sent a screenshot of the upvotes and 3 words. So, damn, proud. I stared at the screen because that sentence felt like sunlight through heavy curtains. A week later, V2 was quieter, tighter, and faster to assemble. I registered a domain, Recore, $12, and a name that felt like truth. Rebuild, reuse, repair the core. I sketched a bare site, posted build notes, opened a contact form, and did the terrifying thing. I linked my new site under a second Reddit post. This time it didn't go viral. It detonated. Discords pinged. Forums lifted the link and shouted. A mod DM'd me. You hit Hacker News. Do you know what that is? I laughed and typed, vaguely. Should I panic? He replied with a cat gif, holding a laptop. Orders weren't real orders yet, more like wishful pre-orders. And if you ever, emails. But in a spreadsheet I built with my usual unfancy, the math whispered, if I streamline panel cuts and batch the small hardware, I could ship 20 kits a month from a table, maybe 30. So I cleared half the garage, slid the lawn tools right and the folding chairs left, and erected a plastic table I bought on clearance. Recore HQ, 15 feet from the fridge. Packaging station on the washer. Label printer perched on a paint can. A whiteboard with airflow diagrams and small, handwritten words. No one's coming. You are allowed to be the one. No one at home asked what the boxes were. No one asked why I missed dinner or why the laundry smelled like warm PLA. For once, it didn't hurt. The silence was a shield I could shape. On Sunday afternoon, the front door banged. Maxine arrived, a hurricane in sunglasses, trailing laughter, duffels, and a Bluetooth speaker beating a curated heart. Mom almost cried. Dad stood like a medal. How are the professors? Do they love you? Of course they did. Of course they said leadership lived in her blood. Max drifted down the hall and paused at the garage like a cat catching heat. She took in the table, the labeled bins, the stacked kits marked Recore, batch 4, the whiteboard scrawls. You building stuff? She said. The words light, the eyes not. Yeah, I didn't look up. She chuckled. Okay, Miss Elon. The nickname was Needle and Candy, sharp and sweet. She wandered off, but I felt the seed plant, the one that sprouts into a hand that reaches for what it didn't grow. That night, Ethan texted, proud of you, don't shrink. I typed back, I won't. Then I stared at the use grateful eyes note. I'd stuck to the corkboard out of spite. Gratitude, I decided, isn't what you owe people who only clap when there's a payday. Gratitude is what you give the broken thing that lets you become whole. The next day, I mailed out 32 kits. I returned to find my chair spinning and my browser open to my own site analytics, heat mapped. Max rotated in my seat like a cartoon villain, smirking. Your website's clean, she said. Basic, but fast. Why are you touching my stuff? Relax. I was curious. Didn't know you were building a whole startup. She sampled the word like a truffle. You know, if this takes off, we should collaborate. You do the nerdy bits. I'll pitch. Investors love me. She smiled, but her eyes didn't. The room went slightly colder. I didn't argue. I learned early that reacting around here was a trap. Complain and you're ungrateful. Accept and you're resilient. Succeed and suddenly everyone remembers your middle name. 2 days later, I learned what collaboration meant in Maxine. A new thread appeared on a startup forum under our last name. Coming soon. Modular DIY PC kits. Cork Crate. A family-powered innovation. Max B. My photos, my layout, my rails, my story, edited. I stared at the screen until my heartbeat stopped sounding like a stampede. Then I locked the cabinets, encrypted drives, changed every password. I printed a letter with a tone I'd never used in this house before, cease and desist. Then I printed the receipts, timestamps, prototypes, metadata like breadcrumbs, and sent them to the Forum Imad and to the academic integrity desk at Max's school, because stolen IP on school resources is a line you don't call sisterly. The post vanished by morning. Max didn't. But that is part 2 of this story. Tonight, I will pack 5 more kits and label them with a steady hand. The fan hum will sound like ocean. The screen will show a new email blinking. Would you be able to supply 20 to 25 kits per month for a community program? Funding available. I don't look downstairs for permission. I look at my hands. And I think, I wasn't given much. I was given enough. Stop! My sister Maxine Brown always had a way of walking into a room like it was waiting for her. That Friday night, the living room lights were too bright, her perfume too confident, and the word home sounded temporary when she said it. She hugged Mom like she was back from war. Still the same couch, Max laughed, tossing her duffel bag beside it. Still smells like popcorn and Dad's aftershave. Dad grinned, flipping through ESPN highlights. So, Miss Dean's list. How's campus? Oh, you know, she said, stretching. They keep begging me to lead more groups. Leadership in my blood, remember? I almost snorted. Mom clasped her hands, adoring. We always knew you were meant for big things, sweetheart. Meanwhile, I slipped past them with a bowl of noodles and a silent prayer that none of them would notice me. But of course, Maxine noticed everything, especially when it wasn't hers. Saturday morning, I found her in the garage doorway, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. She scanned the shelves, the whiteboard sketches, the boxes marked Record, Batch 5. Whoa, she said, voice sugary. You built all this? Yeah. For real? Like yourself? Yeah. She walked in slowly, brushing dust off a shipping label. Cute name. Record. What's it mean? Repair the core. Rebuild from what's broken. Max smiled like she'd discovered gold in a pile of trash. That's catchy. I could already feel the gears in her head turning. You should let me help, she said. I know people who'd love this idea. I could pitch it, get some eyes on it. I'm fine. You're too humble, Wendy, she grinned. You're one of those geniuses who doesn't realize she's a genius. Lucky for you, I do. Then she left, her perfume lingering longer than her words. Sunday afternoon, I returned from the post office carrying a stack of prepaid shipping slips. The garage smelled faintly of acetone, not my usual solder smell, sharper. The chair was turned, the monitor was still on, and there, in the taskbar, a familiar icon blinked. Screenshot Manager. Maxine's voice drifted from the hall. Hey, your site traffic's insane, she said, pretending casual. You're basically going viral. Congrats. Something in me went still. How do you know that? She shrugged. I just checked. You left the page open. I didn't. She hesitated. Relax, Wendy. I was just curious. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing her smirk, hearing her say family business. My gut knew she wasn't done. 2 days later, my inbox proved it. A friend from the DIY Tech Forum sent a link with the message, Hey, are you partnering with your sister now? The thread title, Coming Soon, Modular DIY PC Kits, Cork Crate, a family-powered innovation. Max B. My hands went cold. The photos, my photos, were there. The prototype, the labels, even my handwriting on the tape notes. Under it, Max's caption read, So proud of what my sister and I have been working on together. Big things coming for the Brown family. I just stared at it. My chest hurt. Not like heartbreak, more like betrayal had found a new shape, sharp and specific. I printed the screenshots. Every timestamp, every edit. Then I typed something I never thought I'd type to my own sister. Cease and desist. I didn't email it. I printed it, sealed it, and slid it under her bedroom door. The next morning, the post was gone. But at breakfast, Max sauntered in wearing Dad's old sweatshirt, phone in hand. You really reported me? She asked, fake laughing. I protected my work. We're family. That's not a license to steal, she scoffed. You're being dramatic. I was just helping. Exposure's exposure. Then expose your own work, I said quietly. Her jaw twitched. You think this, she waved a hand at the garage, makes you better than me? No, I said. It just makes me the one who actually built something. She left. The silence afterward felt like static, loud, uncomfortable, humming with tension. That night, Mom knocked softly on my door. She entered like she'd practiced empathy, but forgot the lines. Wendy, she said carefully, we saw the posts and the emails you sent your sister. I looked up from my keyboard. She made a mistake, Mom continued. You don't have to make it ugly. We're family. Keep this in-house. Mom, she stole my work. Mom sighed, almost smiling. You're overreacting. You two should collaborate, not compete. I leaned back in my chair. You only say that because you think she'll win. Her lips pressed into a line. That's not fair. Neither was that sticky note you gave me that said, use grateful eyes, I said. Her face fell. For once, she had no script. She left without another word. The next few days blurred. Orders doubled. I shipped until my wrists ached. And then an email popped up from Tech Edge Weekly, a real journalist, asking to feature Recore. The headline they proposed. This teen built a sustainable computer startup from scraps. When it published, the site traffic crashed my inbox. Mentions, DMs, partnership offers, the kind of noise that doesn't sound like noise anymore. That's when my parents finally looked up. Suddenly, they wanted to talk business. But that's a story for another night. Because by then, the golden child wasn't the only one coming home for glory. My parents were next. And they weren't coming empty-handed. The article changed everything. Within 48 hours, Recore was no longer a hobby in the garage. It was a headline. The traffic counter rolled like a slot machine. Schools emailed. Bloggers quoted my Reddit post. Even a small nonprofit in Arizona asked if I could supply 20 kits a month. And for the first time in my life, the Brown family actually said my name with interest, not obligation. Mom appeared at my door one morning holding her phone like it had personally betrayed her. Wendy, she began, why is there a journalist emailing our family account asking to talk about Recore? What even is that? It's my company, I said. Your company? Dad's voice came from behind her, suspicious. Are you in trouble? Before I could answer, Maxine breezed in with a smirk. She's not in trouble, she said. She's blowing up. Mom blinked. Blowing up? Max shrugged. You didn't know? She's basically internet famous now. The silence that followed was weirdly holy, the kind that happens right before someone decides they suddenly care. That evening, the garage wasn't quiet anymore. Mom stood in the doorway, Dad leaned against the frame, and Max hovered like an unwanted intern. Mom's voice was syrupy, careful. We were just talking, she said. Maybe it's time to formalize all this. Make it a real business. I froze mid-label. It is a real business. Dad nodded. Right, but we mean with proper structure. An LLC, you know. We could help. Keep the finances clean. You focus on your little builds. My little builds? The phrase landed like a hammer on glass. I turned, slow. You want to own it. Dad frowned. Don't twist this. We're offering guidance. Mom added, it would benefit everyone. After all, we did let you use the garage, and that old computer, even if it was outdated, got you started. That did it. The same people who once told me to be grateful for scraps were now claiming equity in my success. I reached into my drawer, pulled out a folder, and laid it flat on the workbench. The sole proprietorship certificate for Recore, registered under Wendy Brown 2 months earlier. Their faces stiffened. Mom blinked. When did you do this? Before any of you noticed I existed, I said. You didn't tell us. You didn't ask. Dad's jaw tightened. You're getting in over your head. You've got something decent, but you don't know how the world works yet. Let us help. No, I said. You want to own it. You're being ungrateful, Mom snapped, voice breaking into its familiar pitch. There it was again, the family motto. Ungrateful. Because nothing terrifies people like you, outgrowing the version of yourself they can control. I crossed my arms. You keep using that word like it's holy. I'm not ungrateful. I'm just done being harvested. Dad's expression hardened. Then maybe it's time you start paying rent. I smiled. I already do. Check the mortgage statement. That caught them off guard. 2 months earlier, I had quietly started contributing to the mortgage through the online portal, not to earn points, just to keep the peace. Now I wasn't sure I wanted to keep paying for walls that trapped me. They left the garage without another word. But I could hear them whispering in the kitchen, the same way people talk after realizing their child just became independent enough to stop fearing them. The next morning, I bought a keypad lock for the garage door. Installation took 15 minutes. The satisfaction lasted hours. Days blurred into packages, solder fumes, and emails. Then one changed everything. Congratulations. You've been selected to present Record at the Vancouver Youth Tech Summit. Travel and accommodation covered. I just stared. For so long, my world had been the size of this garage. Now it had a flight number attached to it. I called the only person who'd understand. Mr. Groves, I said when he picked up. You remember that Reddit project? He laughed. The one with the mutant fan and the zip ties? Of course. They want me to present it in Canada. A pause, then. About time. I exhaled. What if I mess up? Then you'll fix it, he said simply. That's what you do. The week before the trip, the house felt different. Tense. Performative. Mom started setting 3 plates for dinner again. Dad asked, too casually, so you'll mention the family, right? Maybe how we supported you? Even Max started lingering in the garage again, pretending interest. Need a manager yet? She joked, flipping her hair. No, I said, just peace and quiet. But peace was never something the Browns gave freely. The night before my flight, Mom appeared at my door with that smile, the kind that hides an agenda under politeness. Sweetheart, we're so proud of you, she began. You've come so far, and we were thinking, after your summit, maybe you could mention that Record started right here, in our family garage. I closed my laptop. You mean your garage? It's ours, Wendy, she said, voice tightening. We gave you everything. You gave me a broken computer and a note that said, use grateful eyes. Her face froze. For once, there was no comeback. I am grateful, I said softly. Just not to you. I zipped my suitcase and walked past her. For the first time, she didn't stop me. Because deep down, I think she knew. Gratitude wasn't the lesson she taught me. Independence was. And I was about to prove it on a stage far beyond this house. The plane lifted through a sheet of clouds like someone peeling back years of silence. For the first time in 19 years, I wasn't Wendy Brown, Max's little sister. I was Wendy Brown, founder of Record, invited to speak at the Vancouver Youth Tech Summit. The hotel smelled like carpet cleaner and fresh ink from the event banners. One of them read, "Innovation isn't always polished." Someone on the planning team had pulled that line straight from my Reddit post. I smiled when I saw it. Rough edges, finally being celebrated. When I stepped onto the stage, there were 600 people in the audience. Teachers, engineers, founders, and students with notebooks, bigger than their confidence. I started with a photo of that beige fossil of a computer. This, I said, was my first lesson in gratitude. Not the kind that keeps you small, but the kind that makes you resourceful. Laughter rippled, then silence, then focus. I told them about the fan from the broken projector, the desk lamp soldering, the zip ties holding the first prototype together. When I showed a slide of kids in Detroit building their own kits, the crowd applauded mid-presentation. And when I closed with, I wasn't given much, but I was given enough to build something better, the applause lasted long enough for me to forget what doubt sounded like. Backstage, an organizer handed me a lanyard. Congrats, she said. You're one of 5 finalists selected for direct funding interviews, up to $100,000. My knees almost buckled. A week ago, I was soldering in a garage that reeked of guilt. Now, someone wanted to invest 6 figures in what that garage had birthed. A few hours later, I was in a quiet hotel lounge sipping terrible coffee, waiting for my turn with 2 donors, one from a hardware accelerator, another from a sustainable tech fund. My phone buzzed. A message from Maxine. You at that nerd conference? Mom saw something on Twitter. She's freaking out. Dad says we need to talk. LOL. I ignored it. 5 minutes later, another ping. A screenshot. It was a Facebook post. My name, my face, my summit photo, captioned by Mom. So proud of our brilliant daughter, Wendy Brown. Always knew she'd do something amazing with her tech skills. Hashtag family business. Hashtag Record proud. I froze mid-sip. I could almost hear her voice saying "our" like it was a trademark. Within minutes, comments poured in. You must be so proud. Knew she'd inherited your drive, Sharon. When's the family launching in the States? The same people who ignored every science fair I entered were now congratulating my parents for raising a visionary. It wasn't just theft, it was erasure dressed as pride. I didn't post a response. I didn't call. Instead, that night, I quietly edited the About page on the Record website. I added a paragraph. Record was born from neglect as much as from curiosity. It began in silence. From the broken leftovers no one wanted, from the hand-me-downs labeled, "Be grateful." Sometimes what people throw away becomes what saves you. No names, no accusations, just truth wrapped in calm precision. I hit save. The next morning, the change had already made its way home. A distant cousin commented under Mom's post, "Beautiful story. Loved Wendy's about Paige. The part about being overlooked hit hard." Then another, "Wait, Sharon, did you really give her a broken PC? That's wild." By afternoon, Mom's post was gone, deleted. But the damage was done. Not to me, to the illusion she'd built. At the summit's networking reception, a woman tapped my shoulder. "Hey, you're Wendy Brown, right? My brother lives in Ohio. He sent me your story," said, "The girl who got a junk computer just got a standing ovation in Vancouver." I laughed, a little breathless. She smiled. "I work with a school district in Colorado. We'd love to do a pilot program. 12 schools, 4,000 students. We can fund travel." I nearly dropped my drink. She handed me a card. "Think about it. You deserve this." After she walked away, I just stood there, surrounded by people pitching million-dollar apps and AI toothbrushes, holding a business card from someone who believed in second chances, in broken things rebuilt. That's when I realized I hadn't just built hardware, I'd built proof. Proof that you don't need applause to matter, that you don't need permission to begin, that sometimes the scraps are the miracle. When I flew home, I was exhausted but lighter. That piece lasted exactly 8 minutes. Because when I walked through the front door, the house looked staged, too tidy, too bright. Mom was chopping salad like she was on a cooking show. Dad pretended to scroll through the TV menu. Max appeared from the hallway the second I set my bag down. "World traveler," she smirked. "Heard you crushed it." "Thanks," Dad chimed in, already beaming. "We're so proud, sweetheart. Everyone at church was talking about you. We should all sit down soon. Talk expansion. Max has some ideas for your next phase." Before I could even ask what that meant, I walked into the garage. Except it wasn't the garage anymore. My workstation was pushed to the back. My prototype table, buried under new props, a ring light, and printed signs reading Recore Origins. In the center, a notepad labeled Max's Pitch Concepts. I turned around. "Why did you touch my workspace?" Mom didn't even flinch. "It's not just yours, Wendy. It's the garage." Dad added, "Max needed space. She's planning a few concept videos, origin story style, real family vibe." Max smiled. "We could recreate your early days. Me filming you working on that old PC. It'll feel authentic." I laughed. Not cruelly, just quietly. "You were never in the origin story." Dad stood, insulted. "Wendy, this attitude—" "No," I cut in. "You don't get to rewrite what you ignored." Mom crossed her arms. "We're trying to help. You should be grateful." There it was, the curse word of our house. I walked to the garage door, tore down the Recore Origins sign, and flipped the ring light toward the wall. Then I taped a note over the door. Not a family business, not a group project, not for sale. I looked at them one last time and said, "Gratitude isn't obedience. It's knowing when to walk away." That night, I packed everything that mattered. The prototypes, my drives, my notes, and left. Destination, Colorado. 3 days later, I called the bank. "Hi," I said. "I'd like to remove 2 co-signers from the monthly mortgage contribution." The agent asked, "Are you the primary payer?" "Have been for 5 months," I said. "Processed in 24 hours." A text from Mom followed. "Why does the statement say $0 due from us?" I replied, "Because I stopped investing in ungrateful partners." And then I muted the thread. Colorado felt nothing like home, and that was exactly the point. The air was thinner, cleaner, and the silence didn't carry judgment. I rented a tiny studio above an old bookstore downtown. No parents, no sister, no sticky notes demanding gratitude. Just me, a desk, and a soldering iron that hummed like freedom. The Colorado school district that reached out after the summit turned out to be serious. 12 schools, 4,000 students. They wanted pilot kits within 3 months. I said yes before I could overthink it. A week later, Recor's first big shipment rolled out. The shipping labels read, "Built from the broken, for those who refuse to stay that way." I didn't post about it, didn't brag, but word travels, even when you stop talking. 2 weeks after the move, an email popped up from a production facility in Oregon. They'd seen a Record video from one of the classrooms. They wanted to discuss scaling for national distribution. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the proposal, cost breakdowns, warehouse space, manufacturing capacity. They didn't see me as a teenager building in a garage. They saw me as a founder. I signed the preliminary agreement that same night. For the first time, Record wasn't just mine. It was becoming something bigger than the Browns could ever shrink down. Of course, my family found out. They always do. It started with a local newspaper piece. Teen innovator Wendy Brown partners with Oregon facility to scale sustainable hardware startup. By evening, I had an email from a reporter. Your mother said you would be open to a joint interview about your family's role in your success. My jaw clenched. Family's role, right? I replied with one sentence. That must have been my business partner's evil twin. The next day, my phone rang. Mom. I almost didn't answer, but silence can sound too much like surrender. Wendy, she began, bright and brittle. We just thought it would be nice to celebrate this together. You've done so much, and we're so proud. The journalist wants to feature the whole family story. You told her we'd interview together. A pause, then softly. Well, we just wanted to be included. That's not wrong, is it? No, I said, but claiming credit for something you tried to take over, that is. She sighed. You've changed. Yeah, I said, so have the locks. Click. An hour later, another text buzzed in. Maxine. Okay, no hard feelings, but if you ever need marketing help, I'm down. Just send me your pitch deck. I'll boost it. I sent her a one-page PDF. Black background. White text. Recor has no open roles for liars. No reply. By month's end, the Oregon partnership was official. We launched a small production run. 200 kits, then shed. Schools across 3 states ordered pilot batches. I hired a 4-person team. Real collaborators. Real believers. We worked out of a modest office in Boulder, a converted warehouse with concrete floors and sunlight that hit just right around 3 p.m. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the window. Same girl who once begged her parents to notice her. Same hands that rebuilt a dying computer. Just steadier now. One afternoon, Ethan stopped by the office. He set down a coffee beside my laptop. Your first team meeting, he said, smiling. You ready? Barely, he chuckled. That's how you know it's real. When I glanced up, I saw something in his eyes. Steady pride, no envy, no competition. The kind that says, I want to see you win, even if I'm not in the spotlight with you. That was new. That was peace. That weekend, my inbox pinged again. This time from a teacher in Detroit, the same nonprofit that had first messaged me months ago. They attached a video. Kids in a classroom assembling Recor kits, cheering when the lights blinked green. In the background, a little boy shouted. My brother said I couldn't fix stuff. Now I'm teaching him. I froze. Tears hit my keyboard before I realized I was crying. Because that's it. That's the entire point. It was never about proving my parents wrong. It was about proving that broken things and broken people could still build something that lasts. A month later, the same newspaper that ran the family story request published a correction piece without my involvement. Local innovator Wendy Brown builds independent empire, turns down family offers to take over her company. No quotes from me, no bitterness, just truth. Mom didn't call this time, neither did Dad. Max unfollowed me on social media. Silence again, but this time it felt earned. When journalists now ask about Recor's beginnings, I keep it short. I tell them I started with a broken computer and no one cheering, because sometimes that's all you need. Not applause, not permission. Just a reason, and a screwdriver. 3 months later, I walked into a Denver school where students had built Recor kits from recycled parts. On the wall, someone had written in marker, "Use grateful eyes." For the first time, I smiled at those words, because now they meant something different. Not be thankful for less, but see the value in what you have and rebuild from it. The camera crew from the education department filmed me quietly. No makeup, no PR script. Just soldering beside a 12-year-old girl who asked, "Did anyone ever help you start this?" I said, "Eventually, but first, I had to stop waiting for permission." She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. And that's where the story really ends, not with revenge or vindication, but with peace, with a company built from scraps, and a girl who finally stopped apologizing for fixing what others threw away. Wendy Brown, Recor built from the broken, for those who refuse to stay that way.